Radio check. Loud and clear.
KSL Sports and KSL Podcast present Mode Push, an American view of F1, starting now.
And I'm stuck. He's looking gut with his honestly.
I'm gutted. I'm absolutely gutted.
I enjoyed this so much. Thank you.
All right, everybody, welcome on in. It's another edition of Mode Push, an American view of F1, our podcast starring Dan Jimenez across the ether and myself, Alex Kirry. Thanks for being with us on the program today, everybody. Dan Jimenez, our engineering / Brainiac car expert on the show as usual, joining me. Dan, how's your week, man? Everything good?
Good. Yes, getting amped for a back-to-back that I think are going to be super exciting.
I don't know a lot about, like, Hungary to me is a little bit of a mystery. Like, it's just one of those races that can sometimes, you tell me, can get a little bit lost in all of the other races that seem a little bit on paper more sexy, right? Your Monacos. And even, coming on the heels of what was a wildly, there's no way you're going to be able to match this type of a British Grand Prix. The only thing that I remember from the Hungary GP is Lando breaking his trophy a couple of years ago. Like that's the thing that pops into my head. Yeah. And by the way, really cool helmets that everybody has that have that kind of Hungarian style pottery and glaze work, and it's really cool looking. I'm assuming they had to do that just as almost like a little bit of an apology, because it took like 6 months to make that trophy, and then it broke in 2 seconds, of course. So, but where does the Hungarian the Hungarian Grand Prix land in all of this stuff? Because that's really the only thing I remember is that trophy breaking.
The Hungaroring is like the forgotten middle child, I think, of Formula One tracks. But when you start to name off the things that you can remember about it, it's had its moments. Last year, he broke the $400,000 trophy when he slammed it, or whatever the price was on it, when he slammed his bottle of champagne down to celebrate. There was obviously the year where Esteban Ocon got his first win, when there was like rain came out and they got the strategy right. There was, I think was it the same race or a different race when Lewis started. He was the only. They had a standing start. They had a red flag and a standing start in the formation lap. Everyone except Lewis came in to get wet tires to do a pit lane start, and he was the only person out on the grid. There's that strange image of just him in first, just him by himself. Nobody else.
Yeah,
just him by himself. But Hungaroring's cool. I mean, I was just looking up the Wikipedia page. It opened on the 24th of March, 1986. Which is 16 days after I was born.
Oh, there you go.
So it's a really old track.
This is your ring, dude. This is your GP, man.
I think it's a cool track. It's relatively short and has it just kind of races like a go-kart track, I think, in a lot of ways. Not like big long straights, so it's going to be pretty high downforce. So I think it's going to really give us a good idea of how the rest of the season is going to play out. A lot of teams are bringing updates, most notably Red Bull. Max talking about like, this is the big update of the year, and hopefully this gives us our advantage back. If not, then it's going to be a tough rest of the season. So I think all eyes are on Red Bull if their update works this week or not.
So let's talk about, we'll come back to the race itself. Just as interesting this time of year seem to be all of the things that go on off the track. And we're kind of, I don't know, hashtag F1 blessed when the you don't have the there's no such thing as like the silly season being just reserved for one part of the year. We've gotten a steady stream of rumors, and the driver market is going to be pretty wild, and we're going to see. I mean, obviously, we don't have a lot of the stuff figured out for next year, but some things are starting to fall in place, and the rumors are starting to kind of make more sense now too. Kind of focus a little bit on some of those as well. So, Kevin Magnassen. That's the big news that we are, at least it's been made official that he is not going to get renewed. He's not going to be driving for Haas next year. Is K-Mag totally finished being on the F1 grid? This is a guy who made a comeback after you saw Nikita Mazepin off the grid after the whole Russian stuff and COVID and how bad his race. I mean, he just didn't have any racecraft anyway. But He came back to the sport. K-Mag did, almost like a favor. It felt like, right? Where it was like comes back to be a part of the whole F Smash crew with Roman and oh gosh, why am I forgetting their old race?
Oh, Mick Schumacher before that.
Well, there's Mick. I'm just saying who was the
Gunther,
the team principal? Gunther Steiner. I don't know why I would have forgotten that. He's like the most popular guy. So all of those guys, all the things that added up. Is K-Mag off the grid for good? Do you think?
Oh yeah, I think he's done. He, like you said, he got like a bonus 3 more years out of his career. It was already over. So good for him. Hopefully he took away some good money and some good, memories from the last few years, but I think he'll go sports car racing. He'll go Le Mans racing. He'll, his driving career is not over, but I think he's done so in F1.
So then the Haas seat questions start to come up, and it's almost a badly kept rumor, badly kept secret that Esteban Ocon, of course, would be the person who would fill that seat. Ollie Behrman obviously is going to get the drive for Haas as well. It's an interesting pairing, and it's something that I don't hate. You have a relatively veteran-ish guy in Ocon, a guy who's been a race winner before in F1, I think, right? Hasn't he won? He won a GP.
Hungaroring. Yep.
Oh, yeah. So him getting a win, being a kind of guy that's a little bit maybe misunderstood, but certainly has his own kind of mystique about him on the grid, and that's why he's leaving Alpine and he's going to Haas. I like the Ollie Behrman kind of young thing. I like young drivers getting shots. I don't like the idea of just a bunch of the same retreads happening. Like, let's give these guys some shots. And Ollie Behrman, of course, scored 6 points already. He has more points this year than well, I didn't want to say it, but certainly than Logan Sargent has ever earned his. Did Logie ever get a point? Did we ever determine he's still pointless?
The only time he finished in the points he got was Texas last year, and then they got some sort of post race disqualification. It's something they didn't pass muster in the rules, and so no, I don't think he has an official points finish.
11th, I think, 2 weeks ago, and
very close.
He's getting close. He's not a horrible. I don't know what his future looks like, except for that it's not going to be an F1. But that's an interesting pairing for Haas, and it should be a good one for the American team.
Yeah, I think this is like just a new start. It's a clean slate for Haas. It feels like Gunter, Hülkenberg, Magnussen were an era. And now that era is over, and we've got the new team principal. I can't remember his name right now. Young guy, engineer mind. Not, Gunter was not an engineer. He was a manager. And so you got an engineer at the helm and, experienced driver in Ocon, fresh blood with Ollie Behrman, and a new contract with a renewed contract with Ferrari for their engines. So I think it's exciting. It's got to be exciting times at Haas right now for, if you're looking into the next 3 years. It seems like they're set up well.
Ayayo Komatsu, by the way, the team principal.
Komatsu.
Yeah, he's the one you'd see in the videos arguing with Gunter about stuff, and he was a little bit more like even-keeled about things. I know it's a shock that he would be even-keeled compared to but I think everybody sees that it's not just the power unit in the back of the Haas. It's been some other things that have equated to more success than we've seen. I mean, frankly, this is the most points I've seen a Haas team score in the time that I've watched them. And that's the reason that you're seeing a guy like, speaking of guys who've revived their career and is going to be in the sport for much, much longer than we would have thought he would have ever been. This is a guy who's commentating on German TV in F1. And so I think Nico Hülkenberg has been a really, really cool story. So Haas has given us some insane storylines this year, really cool ones, and it's really good to see that they're that Magnussen. I like the dude though. I mean, argue with anybody how you will about Kevin Magnassen, no one will ever say he was a guy who tiptoed into corners or was always just trying to do he didn't take any risks. That's not him. He was an insanely fun driver to watch, the Dane.
Yeah, and I'm excited to watch the rest of the year. Now it's like, what do I got to lose?
Nothing.
I dare you to ban me for a race, and then I get a fresh clean slate and another 12 driver points
sure
to use up. It's like he's going to use all 6 fouls up, so it'll be fun.
All right, so that's what some of the race seats look like in that sense. I don't know what it looks like the rest of the way. What have we figured out with some of these other teams and where some of these other drivers could go? Just in the little couple weeks that we've been chatting about this.
Yeah, well, we talked last time about all the rumors around Sergio Perez getting replaced, and in media day today that the questions got asked and he kind of rebuffed any potential rumor of him getting replaced and tried to play it cool. But, Yuki, the opposite. Yuki was like, yeah, if Red Bull needs a driver, it should be me, obviously. Like the quote was, it would be weird if they picked Liam Lawson for that seat, which I agree. It would be weird. Liam's raced a handful of races, and Yuki, I think, has done, proven it way more. Daniel Ricciardo wasn't part of that conversation, but maybe the question was, asked of him was just about Liam. But I think Yuki's head is at where, like, hey, if that seat becomes available, I am the obvious choice.
He's not wrong.
And,
I don't know why Helmut Marko is so he's so apprehensive to put. Yuki has busted his tail, man, and he's really young too. So it's not like you're going, well, he doesn't really have it. He's not really showing enough progress. He's definitely showing progress in a car that has not shown a lot of other progress otherwise.
Yeah. Put him in for a year or two in the Red Bull seat, put Liam Lawson in the V-carb seat for 2 years. And then if it's not working out, swap him out.
Yeah. No, I don't know why these, Red Bull seems more like, of all the teams, by the way, they seem like the ones that have the weirdest agendas when it comes to these drivers. And obviously you have the thing where Helmut Marko looks like, Palpatine. So it doesn't really help that he comes across as like just, throwing people down into the abyss and being like, you're done. You're never going to be here again. But there's also rumor that Helmut Marko's like, I might be out of here after this year.
Yeah, who knows? I think the weird thing with Red Bull is they have, their ownership in Austria and in
Thailand,
Thailand, that they, that ownership seems to care a lot about who the two drivers are because it's a marketing machine, right?
Yeah.
This exists to sell Red Bull drinks. And so it seems like that maybe more than any other team, the ownership gets up in their business around who they want their drivers to be. So it seems more political than any other team.
Yeah, it's and it's weird too because they're the ones that are considered the most uppity when it comes to being bossy about who they're going to be able to pick, and Ferrari and Mercedes are staring at them from across the garage, as actual works teams that make cars, and they're looking and they're going, dude, you guys are being a little bit weird about this. But speaking of Mercedes and speaking of how things are going here, we didn't really get to break up a ton of. I was thinking more and more since we chatted about the British Grand Prix win by Lewis, and I know that everybody gives him a lot of credit because he was able to somehow predict the amazing success that Mercedes had when he joined the team. And then everybody going, oh, he must see something very similar that Ferrari's going to enjoy 7 or 8 years of world championships in a row. The likelihood's pretty low on that just because of how competitive the sport is and how difficult it is to do something like that. So how does Lewis feel now that he'd be leaving Mercedes after that win and knowing that the car is, in fact, getting better? And I know the regulations are totally different. These are going to be absolutely different cars. But do you think there's a slight bit of Lewis that goes, oh man, I might be making the wrong choice here. I might be getting in a Ferrari for a lot more money, but at the same time, we might be losing.
I was about to say, I feel like he's wiping his tears with his $100 bills. Like
he doesn't care.
I mean,
well, but he's
going to be in a fast car.
Yeah.
It'll be new and exciting. And if it doesn't work out, then be like, they didn't nail the development of the 2026 regs and retire, with another $200 million in his pocket.
Boo-hoo.
I don't know. Maybe he's more of a purist competitor than that. And, he might be thinking, I could have stayed. But I'm sure when you get to that stage in your career, you're optimizing for different things. Obviously, money is one of them, but I think new experience, new challenge. So, and I think the veterans know that this stuff is so up and down. You could say who's the best and who's on the best trend right now, and in 6 races we could be having a totally different discussion. Mm-hmm. So, I do think it's to that point where you can't. It's like trying to predict the stock market. You can't. You just got to trust your gut and go with it.
So we did something interesting on our show this week that's a more mainstream sports show. We talked about ESPN doing their ranking of the top athletes of the 21st century, and that was overall athletes. And so this is a list that has MMA fighters and, boxers and soccer players and women's basketball and soccer players. Serena Williams ended up number 2 on the list overall. Michael Phelps was the number 1 21st century. This is all just 2000 and forward. And when you read his numbers, you're kind of like, yeah, it's hard to argue against that. But like Messi was number 3. I mean, you can kind of get it was a worldwide list. So of course my brain went right to where these F1 racers are. Michael Schumacher made the list at 29, and then Lewis Hamilton was put on the list at 19th overall. With a lot of pushback because people are like, athlete. And I know that's been a comparison of the back and forth, but in terms of sportsmen and things that they accomplish, where does high level in multiple world championships with a guy like Michael Schumacher and Lewis Hamilton rank among what we would consider mainstream athletes?
Man, I think that in Formula One, especially, that the athleticism required is so far beyond what the common fan can truly understand.
Underrated.
And yeah, completely underrated, the level of physical fitness, and then the longevity and the mental ability to stay at the top of your game and be so dominant for so long. And, it's easy to discount their success when you say, well, it's the car, or half of it can be attributed to the car. But, half of it is on the driver, and, minuscule errors can lose races, right? And so I'm glad to see that, 2 F1 drivers, made it on the list. I'd be surprised if they put a NASCAR driver on there. There's other forms of racing.
Jimmy Johnson's
don't
actually
require a.
Yeah, Jimmy Johnson made the list. I think it was 48 or something like that. And maybe there's more, but I just remember looking and seeing on the list that he was there. But a guy like Max Verstappen, he didn't make the list. I think they're probably hedging, whether or not he's going to they're probably saying, look, he'll likely be there. But, right now he's a 3-time champion and likely on the road to being a 4-time. Yeah, it was Jimmy Johnson. Yeah, he was number 47. In terms of the best ever NASCAR drivers, where does Jimmy Johnson rank?
Jimmy's got 7 championships, I think. So he's like Lewis. He's got the most championships.
Okay.
Out of anybody all time. So
he's
don't disagree with it.
He's the only NASCAR driver I see on the list he was number 47. So
that would make sense.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, it's obviously a subjective list of what do you define as athleticism. But I think that those are 2 great picks. And Lewis and Michael. So I love to see that. And I think that the thing that people don't understand about I think the forces of driving an F1 car are really the braking, and the one thing I've heard from people who kind of peasants like you and I who somehow get a chance to drive an F1 car or something like it, not even an F1 car, an F3 car or something, an open seater, is how you don't even possess the leg strength to hit the brake hard enough at the force that you need to put on it to drive a fast lap.
Huh.
Yeah. I've seen people who people who drive in other series, they get put in an open seater in an F1 car, and all their engineers are telling them yeah, you got to press the brake harder, And so you just that's one aspect of it that you don't even ever think about.
Yuki's hitting the squat rack in the off season, man. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. No, these guys, lots of lower body strength. We talk about the neck strength.
The neck
stuff
is always
the stamina. What race was it that somebody got out of the car and almost fainted on? It was recent, I think, in the maybe last year.
It was one of these that was I can't remember. Maybe it was one of the Middle Eastern races, right? It was just maybe it was in Qatar.
Oh yeah, it was at night. That. It was too hot at night. It was it was one of maybe it was Saudi Arabia or something. But no, I think the no reservations, I think, in being in calling these drivers athletes on the physical aspect and the mental aspect and the hand-eye and everything that's required for that.
Yeah, we've made fun of baseball players for years, right? Where you kind of have a baseball player body, and it's just not even a thing anymore. These guys fly around these bases as fast as any of these wide receivers, on the NFL, football field, and these drivers. I mean, I think that it's brought a little bit of focus to that with Drive to Survive, right? Where they go, their personal trainer, they're hanging out with them constantly. Yuki is just complaining constantly, having to go work out, and that's been a big thing of his
coach all day long.
and getting out of bed and not eating pasta because he lives in Italy constantly, just talking about how amazing the food is. But yeah, I'm with you. I'm on board. I said I was actually surprised that maybe a guy like Max wasn't going to be like in the 80s or something like that. Like he's working his way up, but we'll see. Time will tell. I don't know where we're going to end up putting Max in terms of like the talented driver list at the end of all of it. And I don't know because it does stink too, Dan, because like think about how much it just depends on whether or not you have a good car. That's it. That's why all these guys are just trying to be like trying to predict where that fast car is going to be, because it could be the difference of you winning a world championship. And like in McLaren's spot, they're getting dinged a lot right now by everybody because they're like, you've got this fast car and you've got bad strategy and you've got guys who don't know how to win because you just haven't been doing it. And so you're making these crappy, strategy decisions while these other teams like Red Bull, all they do is know how to win. So they have that edge on you all the time. It's really a hard thing to guess. And poor Lando's got to be figuring out himself, like how to deal with this thing going forward.
Yeah. Racing more than any other sport really is like the outcome is due to the collective effort of everybody involved. Football, basketball, they have large organizations, but in the end, you put the players on the field and it's the players like that's determines the performance. Mm-hmm. But yeah, like you said, even in the race, like the strategy calls, like these drivers aren't and probably shouldn't be making the strategy calls. Like you got to rely on these other folks with better information. And so, it's one of the things that I love about racing, and it's kind of what you have to learn to get into if you're going to really enjoy it, is all the other stuff above and beyond, is this driver fast? Like you think about Nico Hülkenberg, super fast, never been in a fast car. He's always been in at best a midfield car. Mm-hmm. And, therefore he's never realistically had a chance to finish on the podium. And, you stick him in Sergio's seat, what would he be doing this year? Like he'd be winning races, right?
And Max would be pissed. If you think that's the only time they would have gone wheel to wheel and crashed each other out of a race. Yeah, it's the stuff that the Drive to Survive producers probably be drooling over to be able to have the opportunity to have that kind of a matchup. Yeah.
So, it's just a little bit of the luck of the draw on how your career falls and what team you end up at and, what opportunities, get presented and how you can showcase your talents.
You think about it and you go, wouldn't you guys just want to win the world championship? Like the drivers championship, fine. But the constructors has got to be like, well, obviously this kind of keeps this thing going. And Red Bull has prioritized Max as an individual more than they have the team right now. Is that over the top to say it like that?
That's what it seems like. I don't know how you can dismiss Sergio's performance otherwise. And, they win the Constructors' Championship. It pays more money, obviously comes with all the press and all that stuff. The only disadvantage is you get less wind tunnel time, which might be affecting their development right now. We'll see. Max today in his interview refused to admit that is what is causing their kind of recent slide in performance, that they get less aero wind tunnel time compared to everybody else. But I think it's going to definitely have an effect. But there's every incentive in the world for them to make sure that they have both, the two best drivers they could possibly field.
I'm not the type of person that looks at these things from a betting standpoint, but if I were to put some shekels down on a race like this week, you have bettor's odds, a lot of them going toward Lando Norris this week. They feel like this is where they've figured some things out. I don't know if the Hungarian Grand Prix is just a place that maybe it works out track wise for McLaren versus them at other races. But how does the race itself set up? And before we get to our real podiums versus our dream podiums, where would Lando and kind of a team like McLaren, or who would have the advantage in terms of driving this weekend on a track like this?
Yeah, it seems to be the consensus that right now McLaren is the fastest in the high downforce settings. And you really have seen that in the last few races when it's wet and you're just really needing that mechanical grip out of the, and like when it starts to transition from dry to wet, we've seen both Lando and Oscar just start to rocket up the field. So, Hungaroring dry race, like it's still super high downforce. You don't have a long straight where you need to worry about the drag, lots of, medium speed corners. So I think that, that makes sense that I, probably think that McLaren is going to have an advantage this weekend. Can they put the strategy together? Can they stay out of trouble? All that stuff is the other question. But going back to what we said at the beginning, these updates that Red Bull is bringing is going to tell the story for the rest of the season. If it's a competitive race and they don't, build that advantage up, I think that bodes well for the rest of the season.
All right, Dan, let's get to our weekly real podiums versus dream podiums. I'm going to mark these down here just because the usual thing where I end up watching it and then going, ooh, look how close Dan was to making the prediction. But you know what? We've had a crazy thing over the last 3 or 4 weeks where our dream podiums end up being a little bit more closely related to the actual realities of what are going on. So what do you have this week in the Hungarian?
Yeah. We haven't been dreaming big enough in the last couple of weeks.
I'm going to start putting K-Mag at the top of the list, maybe getting on a couple podiums before he gets kicked out of the sport.
There you go. Real podium. I'm going to say Max gets his revenge from the last couple of weeks. Max win, followed closely by Lando, and I'm going to say George in third. And then dream podium, Oscar gets his first win. Followed by Lando in second, and let's go. Nico Hulkenberg gets his first podium in third.
You know what? I don't hate it, and he's been really freaking racing. Give me your real podium again, the real one, just so I can make sure I'm not.
I think it was Max, Lando, George.
Okay, Max, Lando, George. All right, so my real podium, I've got it flip-flopped. I've got Lando, Max.
Okay.
And then Lewis. I think Lewis is going to still be figuring some stuff out here. So I think Mercedes has some they've got a quick car right now. I don't know how it's going to set up at Hungary, but they figured some things out and my disdain for Toto. I mean, like I told you last week, like I watched one of the episodes of Drive to Survive, and it was him from like a distance, and they were showing when Max won a race last year, and Toto was sitting out there, and I think somebody was on the podium for them, and he was still obviously very distraught. And he has his arms folded in this very, German kind of look, and he says in German to his he said it in English because it was like he goes, "Look at the fanboys on row 1," and he's like, and it was the fanboys that he was talking about were Helmut and. And Yoss
Christian.
and Christian Horner, like all like smiling at the front and everything. Look at the fanboys, row 1. I'm like, of course, it's the same thing you freaking do with your tailored white freaking AMG shirts that you roll into the garage with. Nobody's talking about you. That's why you're mad about it. All right, so, but they're fast. I they know how to freaking win, man. If they get even close, they know how to close in. Speaking of cultures of winning. So I switched it with a Lando, Max, and then a Lewis at third. My dream podium, ready for this one?
Yeah.
It's gonna shock the world.
Shock and awe.
You're gonna go Checo. Okay.
Ooh.
And I can't because look, ultimately he still has a fast car. At some point he's gonna figure his crap out. Like I don't know where he's gone, but like
he's gonna shut the haters up.
He's still got a fast car, and maybe we got to save this for Mexico for when he rolls back home. But I mean, really, nobody's expecting it, and he's gonna take advantage. But part of that's gonna be because Max isn't gonna be on the podium at all. And then I'm gonna go Fernando. I believe in Fernando still. So I'm going my full Spanish-speaking top 2, and then I'm rounding it out, still looking for that full Spanish-speaking 3 at the top. I'm going to go with Ferrari's Carlos Sainz, still going through.
Okay. All right.
So that's my dream podium.
I like it.
Checo on top, just so no one knows what to think at all about the sport.
I like that as a flyer, just like kind of out of nowhere, shut everybody up.
And Checo Perez, right?
Yeah, dominant victory.
Just like
that would be fun.
Like Martin Brundle would have to shut the heck up and not have anything to say because all the guy does is rip on Checo during the races. So there you go. All right, Dan. Fun week. Good breakdowns of the races this week. I don't know what's going to end up really happening with these, but it's always fun to break them down and dream big for guys like Checo, and we'll have K-Mag on a dream podium in some of the coming weeks, I'm sure. So we'll chat with you next week, man. Thanks for hanging out with me.
Love it. Thank you.
There you go. Dan Jimenez, Alex Kirry, Mode Push. Download the podcast, rate it, subscribe, tell friends, teach neighbors about F1. Have them watch Drive to Survive. Whatever it takes to get more fans of one of the most followed sports in the entire world. We'll catch you next time, everybody.